So it's April 2nd, and it's a little after midnight, and I haven't recorded in a while, but I figured I would. And I guess what I really want to do is just talk to you, Rachel. And I don't know, I miss talking to you. I know that you probably can't hear me, but for some reason when I'm alone in the car, I feel like that's the only time that I can really kind of talk to Rachel, you know. I drove to Boston a couple times, actually, when I was going to see my dad when he was very sick after Rachael died, and I don't know, I was in the car, and driving to Boston really is hard for me because of all the times that Rachael and I drove together to Dana-Farber. And you'd think that they'd be not the most pleasant rides because, you know, usually she was in a lot of pain, or, you know, we were looking for answers, and we were looking for doctors to tell us that there was a way for Rachael to live. And none of the doctors were doing that. None of them were telling us that there's a chance. And but Dana-Farber, when we first went to Dana-Farber, we met with a young doctor who, this is all he does is work with cancer patients, an oncologist, and he gave us the only glimpse of hope we'd had for her. He said that it could have just been good bedside manner, so to speak, on the doctor's part, but he said, listen, this is the diagnosis. There were no odds. No one gave odds, like survival rate, this percentage. Everyone said there's no survival rate at the level of your illness is at. Meaning you have stage 4 metastatic colon cancer in your sigmoid colon. You have she had a huge tumor in her colon, which is a whole other story because she knew she was talking about pain or something weird blocking her ability to go to the bathroom a year before she got diagnosed, almost a year, and I wish that we had done something about it, but at that age you never think it's going to be a deadly tumor. And she had a huge tumor in her sigmoid, and it had metastasized. Stage 1 is just recognizing cells that have not divided and aren't being recognized by our immune system as cells that need to die and regenerate and divide. So these cells don't divide and they cluster together, and that's cancer, and that's the beginning of a mass. And Rachael had a very large mass in her sigmoid colon, and it had advanced past the stage 2, means that it had metastasized to the wall of the organ. So it had reached the wall of the organ that it's currently in, and it's potentially going to reach past the wall. And stage 3 is it has spread past the lining of whichever organ it began in, and it's usually stage 3, it's reached your lymph nodes. Stage 4 means that it's spread not only past the wall, the lining of that organ, but it's spread into other organs. That's stage 4, meaning it's fully developed cancer that has reached multiple organs. Stage 4B, what Rachael got diagnosed as, is cancer that's spread to more than one organ. So the origin of the cancer in her colon had spread past the lining and into her lymph nodes, but also it had reached her lungs. And when they described how it had spread past the lining of her sigmoid colon, it had reached into her abdominal cavity. So initially, when we got scans done and the radiologist looked at the report, none of them said cancer. Because of her age and her general well-being, none of these doctors thought cancer. First of all, she got diagnosed with a fallopian tube infection, which was so far off. But they said it was an infection in her fallopian tubes. I don't think she had extensive scans at that point. But after she had scans and she went back and had taken all of those antibiotics that obviously didn't work, and her pain got worse, they started to look at these scans and they said that it was endometriosis, a severe case of endometriosis, which a lot of times resembles mass. Endometriosis does. It's the uncontrollable growth of your uterine wall. And her brother, who's a radiologist, said it was the worst case he had ever seen, meaning it looked like she had masses all over her abdominal cavity. And then when we found out, when they did a biopsy and a colonoscopy, finally, we found out that it was cancer in her sigmoid colon. And so the way that they stage you is they take a biopsy through a colonoscopy of the mass that's in your colon. And when it comes back as cancer, and when it comes back and it's malignant, they look at the scans, and if they see growth that's similar to the growth in the original that they took the biopsy from, they don't biopsy those. They based on all the things they know, they diagnose you. They see that as the cancer outside of outside of its origin. So she was diagnosed at the stage where there's really no turning back. There's nothing they can do. There are countless cases of individuals who had colon cancer and were diagnosed early enough. Now, I don't know how these people find out. I think usually these are people who are older and they have regular pap smears and regular possibly colonoscopies, and they can catch these things. But because Rachael was so young, that protocol didn't exist for her, and it's a rare case. And when we found out, it was very rare. But we also found out that there was doctors were becoming aware of a huge growth in the rate in cancer rates, especially colon cancer, among people under the age of 40 in America. Geographically, this is specific to the United States, of young people being diagnosed with aggressive cancer, colon cancer. So there was this undercurrent happening where we were told that it was very rare, but I think 20 years ago that would have been the extent of the conversation. They would have said this is an extremely rare case of cancer and it's extremely unfortunate, but this is what it is. But there was this undertone of fear with the doctors that diagnosed Rachael. This existing kind of undercurrent that you could see in these doctors' eyes that this was another case of a young person with very aggressive terminal cancer in the colon. And now I found out just a couple weeks ago that Dana-Farber actually just opened up a brand new wing dedicated to people under 40, young people with colon cancer. So, and I'd like to think that the people that came to Rachel's funeral were asked to. There was many relatives of mine and relatives of Rachel's who donated to Dana-Farber on her behalf. And, months later, almost a year later, we find out that they opened a new wing dedicated to young people with colon cancer. So I'm wondering if maybe, I'm sure those funds went to that. They must have. If anybody over there knows, I'm sure they did. So, it was as bad as it gets when you're with someone that you love the most, your only person, and you get that kind of diagnosis. You look for hope. You look for percentages. What are the chances of her surviving? And that wasn't there. We were told on day one that she had no chance, that she was going to die, and the best that they could do was keep her comfortable. As a matter of fact, I had left the day she had her colonoscopy. I went downstairs to eat dinner because at this point we're basically living together in the hospital because it had taken so long for her to be diagnosed, and it was brutal because she wasn't diagnosed. She was not receiving any of the proper pain medication, and she was just in brutal pain. And we were wondering if the doctors even believed how severe her pain was because nothing was helping. And I got a message from her saying that a doctor she had never met, a young intern, stopped by her room while I was downstairs eating and she was in there alone. He shut the door and he sat down. And he started telling her just how, before Rachael had a chance to speak with her actual doctors who knew her, this young intern stopped in with his knowledge of her case and started spouting off just how terrible it was. Oh, well, you're not going to survive. You should do chemo. We're going to do chemo, but just to keep you comfortable. And it was, can you imagine being told that by a guy who knows your diagnosis ahead of time and goes up ahead of the doctors to start talking as if it's no big deal and as if you knew. So she texted me that there's this doctor telling her she's going to die, young guy, and I was furious. I was in a rage. I slammed my food down and I started running upstairs because I was going to catch this guy. And I'm glad I didn't. When I got up there, he was gone, and we told the doctors about this guy, and they took it seriously, and we never saw him again. So, but can you imagine that night finding out what was going on? And Rachel's whole family came to her room, and her brother, who's a doctor, came, and we sat with that information. It was brutal. And when everybody left that night, all the doctors had left, all her family left, and it was just me and her in that hospital room. We made a decision. We said, which I think many people do. So I'm about to run out of time here. I have 30 seconds left. Rachel's gonna live. We're gonna fight this, and you're gonna beat this, no matter what the odds are. From that point on, we had decided that we were not gonna take the doctor's words to heart. That we were gonna overcome and beat the odds, because they, in our eyes, had never come across someone like Rachael. But yeah, that's it. I'm running out of time. I'll come back. Thank you.